You know, as I'm watching our modern society being dismantled, the greatest country on God's green earth, in my opinion, the United States of America, is being dismantled, intentionally destroyed from within by people that have socialist ideologies and Marxist, strategies on how they're going to achieve these goals, the ultimate goal of some sort of a liberal communist utopia that's going to be, the best thing for the world, the best thing for sustainability, and, all of these catchwords they like to use, these catchphrases that sound good on the surface, but when you dig in, you find out that they're actually all about control. As I see these things and I read the headlines every single day, I'm like, oh my God, I mean, what's it going to be? What's the big thing going to be? Is it going to be when they finally are going door to door, Gestapo style, and seizing everyone's Second Amendment rights away from them, the right to bear arms, when they're actually knocking door to door and seizing people's firearms? Is that when things are going to go, Civil War Part 2? I have no idea. But one thing that I always come back to is something a great constitutional attorney said one time. And I've borrowed the phrase because it's so descriptive of what's going on. It's called being drunk on comfort. The United States people and many of the people in the first world nations around the world are drunk on comfort. We've had it so good for so long that we can't imagine any other way of living, right? We can't imagine any other lifestyle than the modern American lifestyle. When in reality, this is the exception to the rule. We should all be trying to hold on to this good time for as long as possible before the next phase comes in, where some tyrant gets control and literally turns you into a slave. So anyway, I'm astounded that there hasn't already been a modern American revolution, even a peaceful one, just a revolution in thinking, when people wake up one day and they see, oh my God, all these things, these socialist programs are anti-American, and they're actually eating away at the soul of the country and our wealth. But people never seem to come to that realization. They just keep standing there with their hands out saying, give me, more, when they don't realize that they're actually robbing from themselves as a nation. So it's a dirty trick that they, I guess you could say they started this whole deal back in 1913, or maybe in 1971, 72, whenever Nixon got us off the gold standard. A lot of arguments could be made to where this tracks back to, but it is part of the New World Order, the new system, where they control everything, and eventually you will own nothing and you will be happy. And to me, that sounds like a nightmare existence. Living in a 15-minute smart city or something like that sounds like a nightmare Orwellian wet dream existence. And I can't ever see myself going peacefully into that living condition. I prefer the country. I want to be further away from the masses, not closer to them or more embedded into the masses, right? So anyway, I continually see these headlines where it's like, over and over and over, these things are happening on a statewide, citywide, nationwide level. And I'm just like, at what point will the Americans say, that's it, no more of this crap, we're not putting up with this crap anymore? And I don't know if that point is ever going to come. Even at the point where they're knocking doors and seizing guns, I would argue most people would roll over and hand them in gleefully. So I want to read some of these headlines to you, to where you'll know why I'm thinking this way and why I think right now we're currently in SHTF. That's shit hits the fan. I forget sometimes people don't know the acronyms, believe it or not, even at this late stage in the game. But SHTF is short for shit hits the fan, or shit hitting the fan. And it is on a daily basis, on a like a death by 1,000 cuts. And most people don't notice. They think, oh, that's just one more cut. That's not a big deal. But I'm telling you, eventually we are going to bleed to death. So, headline 1, Joe Biden to announce executive level gun control office. So he's creating a whole office using executive power, the power of the pen. He circumvented the legislative branch. That's not supposed to happen. The United States has 3 separate but equal branches of government, and the legislative branch is where the laws are supposed to originate. Meanwhile, Joe Biden tried to get them to pass, extensive anti-Second Amendment gun control laws, and they refused to do so or couldn't come to an agreement. So now he's going around them, circumventing that authority and using his own authority to announce executive level gun control office. So who knows how many thousands will be employed, probably ex-ATF agents and stuff like that will be employed to go and harass people about gun control. They're already doing lots of things. I'm seeing videos all over the internet where ATF is acting completely inappropriately. I heard about a guy, I can't remember where that was, but he was basically a small arms dealer that primarily focused on like gun shows and stuff like that. He didn't actually have a storefront. He just had, several guns that he would go to this annual gun show and sell some there, and try to make money, obviously. Well, the ATF came in, at 6 a.m. like they do, or 5 a.m. or whatever, with, 14 people with guns drawn, all in tactical gear and all this stuff, scared the death out of this the guy's kid. And they were like, what's going on? And they were like, well, you didn't cross all your T's or dot your I's on this certain form, when he did, in fact. And he proved to them with evidence that he'd been doing everything according to the law. And still, they came in, said he was doing something illegal, and made him voluntarily give away his FFL license, his federal firearms license. Made him turn it over to them and agree to not sell guns anymore. As soon as he turned it over, they seized every one of his guns that he had for sale. And of course, he'll probably eventually get them back, but no time soon. And I'm sure you've heard about that law, that new one that they're floating around. I think the ATF passed it or something. Again, not the legislative branch. The ATF is not part of that. Laws are supposed to come from your elected officials, not these, bureaucrats that are a lot of times lifers. That is the deep state. These places that, like the ATF, the FBI, where they get these people in there that glom onto power and never let go. That's the problem. Next headline, Biden is using executive power to create New Deal-style American Climate Corps. So he's basically trying to make a, Green New Deal, sort of a executive order where he's going to have this army of 20,000 commies that are going to be going around building trails and making sure Mother Gaia is protected, and fossil fuels are bad. We got to blockade some roads or whatever to make our point, whatever, right? I'm not sure what these people are going to do other than build trails and go around spreading climate change propaganda and probably being monitors on anybody that speaks out against the modern definition of man-made global warming and what the causes are and stuff like this. They're probably going to be online, editing and monitoring those people that are dissenting voices. So this is another example of government overreach and how our constitutional government was never supposed to get to this level. There's nothing in the Constitution that gives Biden executive authority to ban guns or have a gun control office or have this American Climate Corps, an army of federal employees that could be, weaponized. I mean, in years past, you would have never thought about the IRS, getting all these 40 calibers and all these other things that we've heard about, and shotguns and all these things. Why are they arming up all of these agencies like this? And will they arm the American Climate Corps? I ask you down in the comments, let me know. I mean, for somebody that's as anti-gun as Biden claims to be, he sure likes to put them in the hands of the bureaucrats. So next headline here, and this one is really, really telling. It tells the story of the unequal justice system we're all living through right now. See, we're supposed to have equal protection under the law, but that's no longer the law of the land or the rule of the land, according to the Biden regime and Merrick Garland and all these people, right? So check this out. Hunter Biden mugshot was concealed by Joe Biden's Justice Department. So they concealed Hunter Biden's mugshot. They didn't want that all out there on the media, making Biden look bad. He's got an election coming up pretty soon, maybe, if he makes it that long. So To compare and contrast, you guys remember just a couple of weeks ago when they arrested Trump in Georgia, the mugshot was all over the news and TV for several days. The liberals were celebrating about the mugshot. The right was celebrating about the mugshot because they thought it was badass. And it actually brought in a lot of new voters that are, respectful of the way Trump has been handling himself against this obvious witch hunt that's been perpetrated by the Biden DOJ. And so that is the definition of election interference. Your number one opponent, you attack him using your Justice Department. That is election interference, without a doubt. So whether or not the Supreme Court will be willing to hear that case or say they have standing or any of that sort of stuff, who knows? We'll see. But a severe injustice is going on in this country right now. And my number one problem when I see all these news articles and headlines is I always think back to the supremacy clause of the Constitution. It says, if a law does not comply with the Constitution, then it is null and void. The Constitution is the supreme law of the land. All these people have to follow this. They swear an oath to follow this, uphold and defend the Constitution against enemies, both foreign and domestic, and yet our domestic enemies are running the country right now. The fox is in the hen house right now, and nobody seems to be too concerned about it. People are just bebopping along, acting like everything's going to be fine, and I'm telling you, it ain't going to be fine. We're in SHTF right now. It's just happening in slow motion. Next headline. This is a bombshell. FBI lost count of how many paid informants they had in the Trump crowd on January 6th. And this comes from a reputable source. It was the House Republican Caucus or something like that. So the Republicans in the House, probably in the Freedom Caucus, released this. This is data that they found out. They've questioned the FBI. The FBI says we have no idea how many were there, meaning that it was so numerous they couldn't even keep count. How many? I mean, what? At a certain point, what percentage of the crowd were Fed boys or informants or whatever, or sent there to cause a disturbance? I mean, at a certain point, they know how mob mentality works. They know if they get enough people causing problems and rushing the barricades and stuff, that others will follow them. So it was a classic, bait and switch trap that these people had set. Nancy Pelosi calling off the Capitol Police, telling the National Guard to stand down, even though Trump had requested National Guard presence because he knew the crowd was going to be huge. And Nancy Pelosi acted like she didn't get it. Oh, it wasn't official, so I didn't look at that, blah, blah, blah. It's an excuse. She caused it. She caused all the problems. If they'd have had more security there that day. And another thing, if the Capitol Police hadn't at some point moved the barricades and started waving people in, to me, if I were one of those J6ers that was sitting there in jail awaiting trial, that would be my number one goal, would be to find a lawyer that was going to tackle that angle, the constitutional angle of it. For one, I have a right to be there peacefully protesting. And for two, at a certain point, when police officers are waving you past the barricades and escorting you around the Capitol grounds inside, then that means you're not guilty of anything because they invited you in. Okay? So, moving on. I mean, that's a huge one, though. We need to really pay attention to that because I know it's old news now, but it was called a Fedsurrection from the start. And I was hesitant to say that, but now I say it knowing that that's exactly what it was. It was a Fedsurrection. It was not an insurrection. They needed to make it look like an insurrection, and even that failed. They've been trying to say that for 2 or 3 years now, that it was an insurrection and all that, and that's why my prediction is they won't be able to make anything stick to Trump. Now, the question is, are Trump's lawyers savvy enough and smart enough about constitutional law that they will turn the tables on these people and go after them for election interference, which is exactly what all of this stuff is. So, next one here. We can't have a video without talking about the New World Order, so here it is. The Great Reset. Radical Phoenix Mayor Kate Gallego begins implementing climate organization's goal to ban meat, ban dairy, and ban private vehicles in 14 U.S. cities by 2030. So this radical Phoenix mayor is trying to get out ahead of the curve, and she's probably in the It was the WEF, actually, is what I'm thinking about. Klaus Schwab's group of new leaders, or whatever they called them, young leaders, something like that. She's probably in that club, right? And so she knows all the agenda about coming in and taking away your liberty, your ability to purchase and buy meat in this city, the city of Phoenix. I mean, that's a pretty big deal. That's a pretty big deal. They're trying to implement in these 14 cities that 15-minute city idea, where basically you won't have a car, you'll walk everywhere you need to go within 15-minute walks, you'll just be able to walk to work and blah, blah, blah. You'll go home and live in your little cube. Meanwhile, the upper elite will still have their mansions and stuff. Just the plebes will have to live in their cube, you know, and be hooked up to the matrix all the time. But anyway, look out, guys. The Great Reset is constantly attacking our country. Death by 1,000 cuts. Again, on theirs, they have their 17 sustainability goals, or 17 goals for sustainability, whatever the hell it's called. And it all sounds good on the surface, but when you look and you dig down through the BS and the malarkey, next thing you know, you find out it's all about controlling your life, every single aspect of it. These things would make George Orwell blush. They're so freaking invasive. California Democrat legislators vote to ban grass lawns. So this is another step towards the 2030 goals of the UN and the Great Reset and all these things. They're trying to ban your ability to have a grass lawn. And I don't know if that means all old existing grass lawns have to be, excavated or left to die or whatever, but they're worried about water. I mean, and obviously that is something to be concerned about, but I don't like how every single answer to every problem that the Democrats face is banning something from people. No, I mean, there are other ways to do things. Like you could start some sort of an incentive program instead of outright banning lawns. Instead of having laws on the books that ban lawns, how about you have some sort of an incentive program if you want fewer people to have lawns? You give them some sort of tax credit or tax break if they come in with some natural thing like all mulch or something like that, right? And it minimizes how much they water. You give them some sort of a break, right? But no, that's never the thing. It's ban everything. Ban, 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 ban. And I'm anytime I hear stuff, people talking about banning stuff, I'm like, man, this is not good. We're going off the cliff. Next headline. Judicial Watch uncovers key documents and photos on Chinese COVID labs in California. Yeah, Chinese-funded COVID labs run by the Chinese in California. Now, I'd like to know, after COVID especially, did our federal government know about this? Did they have the blessing of the Biden administration? Probably so. That's the bigger story that the mainstream media is unwilling to look into, because it will expose their plan to, I don't know what they're going to do with that. They could be working on some new super COVID. Maybe they already released it. Maybe it has to do with this new scare that they're trying to get going right now. I can't remember the name of that new strain. Maybe that came from that lab. We'll never know. They'll certainly never tell us. They'll certainly never investigate it, because the free press is dead. There are a few people that still try to seek the truth, like myself and a few others on YouTube. I've been watching the guy, really like the guy. Just discovered him not long ago. Jack Spirko here on YouTube. Go check him out. He's got a lot of great stuff. I don't agree with him 100%. He's like an anarchist, so I'm not in with that. But a lot of the stuff he talks about is prepper related. For SHTF. That's coming. That's obviously coming. So, they've been telling us for a while now that Biden has this thing called, it's not called Bidenflation. What'd they call it? Bidenomics. I call it Bidenflation. Others call it Bidenflation. They call it Bidenomics. See, it's for the greater good. You just don't understand it because you can't relate to what it's like being $33 trillion in debt like Joe Biden can. He has no problem spending all of our kids and our grandkids' futures away, right down the drain, right into the money laundering pit of Ukraine, of Zelensky's hands. So, everything's good according to them, though. It's all good. Nothing to see here. The economy's doing great because Bidenomics is actually starting to work. because they said they got the interest to move, or the inflation to move down a couple of points or whatever. Well, here's the problem with that. Years ago, they took food out of the equation for inflation. So actually, Biden's food inflation record, grocery prices are actually up 19.6%. And I would argue that it's probably closer to 25 or 30% from what I'm feeling at the grocery store across the board. Of course, some things are 100 or 150% higher than they were before Biden came in. And I'm taking note of that. I mean, even, you know, I'm a motorhead, so I love, you know, 350 Chevrolet small block V8s and stuff like that. And the other day I was up at the store and they had a bulletin board outside. I looked at the bulletin board as I was passing by, and somebody was selling a 383 stroker, brand new crate engine, from Summit, never been ran before. And the guy wanted like $6,000 for it. I was like, holy crap, for a small block Chevy? Yeah, it was a 383, but damn, $6,000. And I went on their website to look it up, and sure enough, 383s are going for like, you know, $5,500 to $6,500 plus shipping. So he wasn't that far off of what they're asking for them. And what's so bizarre to me is 4 or 5 years ago, I remember looking at them thinking, oh, you know, I could just buy a brand new 383 stroker or a 350 high performance and put in one of my project cars, and you know, I could get it for like $2,500, $2,200, something like that, right? Now it's $6,000. So thanks, bidenomics. You're ruining the United States American dream. And he's ruining stuff around the world for other nations as well. Eagle Pass, Texas issues emergency declaration after never-ending line of military-age males from Venezuela arrive to our border by train. You need to go find these videos. I mean, there are several clips where it's just you know how long a train can be, especially if you're waiting on it and you're late for something. But I mean, imagine that train with every single car stuffed full of migrants. They've been in there so long, many of them had like pitched little tents over the front part of the open container there, so it'd block the wind and they can get in there out of the sun or whatever. It's just unbelievable. They're going all across Mexico because Mexico doesn't want all these Venezuelans coming in there. These are not the best people that are coming here. I would argue they're the worst. And I get it. There's a lot of people that are hard up and they just need to flee their country because of economic situations are just, you know, insurmountable. You can't ever get out of the ghetto in Venezuela or whatever if you're born into that situation. But for the Biden regime to act like and pretend that all of this stuff is caused by climate change and these are climate refugees is just the most idiotic thing I've ever heard. It's clearly their economies are suffering because of, you know, we had a year and a half here in some places, 2 years in some places of COVID lockdowns. In Venezuela and other places south of the border, they had 3 years of COVID restrictions. So many of their businesses were gone, never to return. Their economies weren't as strong or resilient to begin with, so they were going to obviously hit bottom faster than the United States did. These nations don't have the ability to just hit print and call the Fed up and say, oh yeah, just hit print, add another trillion to the economy or whatever. No, they can't do that. They have to live within their means or whatever. So anyway, that's why they're coming. You know, the COVID policies of the WHO and the WEF and the UN and people like Joe Biden with their Build Back Better plan around the world, these globalists caused this massive starvation that's happening in South America and South Africa. They are the cause of the current starvation situation because of their strict COVID policies. Anyway, enough about that. Yeah, they're coming in. Military-aged males. I mean, it was like 90%. You've seen a couple of females and a couple of kids, but it was 90% military-aged males from Venezuela. Wonder what they're going to do once they get here. Well, this Peruvian illegal alien, he was released into the U.S. by the Biden regime. He brutally murdered an American in Houston. It wasn't the whole family, but he brutally murdered an American in Houston. So isn't that lovely? And That's just one example of about 10,000 that I could have pulled out. I could have made the entire video about illegal aliens coming into our country, disrespecting our laws because, hey, newsflash, they didn't respect the border laws. So they came right through. They broke the law right off the bat, tried to circumvent the normal immigration process, the normal immigration system. And it's because the magnet has been turned on by Joe Biden. The come here and we'll grant you asylum. We'll grant you refugee status. That's his loophole. That's why our country is going straight down the crapper. And it's not because a certain ethnicity of people. It's because these people are the poorest of the poor. They're coming up here with that mentality that these third world countries have, and they're taking over major cities. They're living in bum camps, in Seattle, in LA, in New York City, in Chicago, all around the nation, in Houston, all around the nation. These bum camps are getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and more and more and more normal, legal Americans are being kicked out of their homes because they can't afford to pay for it in Biden's America. So, lovely, huh? Oh, check this out. This was bombshell. New York, remember, they're a sanctuary city. They were declared a sanctuary city, meaning, come one, come all. We love everybody, right? Well, now they're saying, you're not welcome here. Outraged New York protesters block bus carrying illegal aliens to former nursing home. There were 10 arrested, and Mayor Eric Adams slams as ugly display. So there was a lot there. Remember, keep in mind, Sanctuary City, New York protesters blocked a bus. So they're getting fed up with it. The communist, liberal, socialist policies that are destroying their cities, right? So these people are getting fed up with it, and now they're starting to protest. And that could catch like wildfire. For one thing, I've heard, I think it was New York City, where they're actually using U.S. tax dollars, whether you paid it through property tax or it came from the Department of Education. They're using government taxpayer-funded buildings, such as schools, to house illegal aliens. They're using nursing homes. Well, that probably displaced those elderly people that were going to go to that nursing home, right? So, it's just over and over and over. The tyranny never seems to stop. It's just nonstop. Now they're pissed off though. So that's a good sign. At least they're getting a taste of their own medicine, and it's not all just coming into Texas and making border states have to bear the brunt. And I don't know if you heard this or not, but a week or so ago, the Biden regime came out with this plan of stay in Texas, basically. They don't want these people being bussed all over the United States, and they're desperately trying to figure out how to stop that. Oh, another thing, Governor Abbott, the governor of Texas, he put up a floating barricade. It was like a bunch of buoys with like these saw blade looking things in the middle to deter people from trying to swim across the Rio Grande. It wasn't 100%, but it was working pretty well. And Joe Biden's administration has now sued him, and then a federal judge got involved and was like, no, you can't stop this. You can't make them tear it down. Backtrack about 6 or 8 months ago, Arizona had basically the same experience with the Biden regime. See, they don't want us to have a secure border. That's the secret to them holding power forever. So they can't give that up. That's the secret to cheating in the election next time around. So they can't give that up, right? So Arizona had a deal where they put up this beautiful, shipping container wall, just using old shipping containers, I guess, that weren't being used at the moment. Or maybe they paid, full price for every one of them. But they paid to build this huge shipping container wall, and it was working. And the Biden regime said, nope, you got to tear it down. You got to tear it down. Taking a direct swipe at the 10th Amendment, at states' rights, at their ability to secure their borders, when it clearly says in the Constitution that the President and the Congress has a duty to secure our border, secure us against invasion. We have an invasion going on, and for whatever reason, they won't admit it. Last headline here. The fix is in. California city plans to grant illegal immigrants the right to vote. So there it is. That's why they're doing all this, is so they can have a never-ending supply of Democrat voters from here to infinity and beyond. So guys, let me know what you think about all these stories. I mean, to me, this is indicative that we're in SHTF right now, and most people have no idea because they're too drunk on comfort to either do anything or to even acknowledge it. They don't want to look at the hard facts. That's the truth of it. So let me know what you guys think about all this. What are you doing to prepare for financial collapse, border collapse, just total chaos, total lawlessness, unequal justice, unequal protection under the law? What are you prepared to do? Keep yourself legal. Don't say anything that's going to incriminate you in the comments, but let me know what you're doing to prepare for this tyranny that's setting in. Anyway, as always, I stand for liberty to the bitter end. I hope you do too.